Hello, well, thank you for inviting me to the CDI Virtual Student Conference. Today I'm going to be talking about career guidance and COVID-19, and I'm really going to be talking about why it's going to be an important and probably fairly long-term part of your practice. So I hope you'll find this interesting. So back in January, I was probably like most of the rest of you in that I was interested in what was going on with this new disease that was happening in China, but I didn't really think it was ever going to have a big impact on me. Maybe some economic impact, but not a personal impact on my day-to-day life. But as time has gone on, we've seen this dramatic rise in the number of cases. It's really been quite frightening, and we've just seen the disease move across the world and really affect all of us. And so my life is really now very different to how it used to be. I've lost the ability to travel, to socialize, to leave my home, to visit the shops, all of these things that I used to take for granted. So in this picture you can see my world now of taking my temperature, putting on a mask and looking out at the wall outside of my office, which I'm looking at now. And there are my plants that I've put there to try and jazz it up. So in this presentation, I'm going to talk about a number of things. I'm going to look at labour market impacts. I'm going to look at psychosocial impacts. I'm going to think about why we need career guidance, and I'm going to offer a social justice perspective. So let's start with the labour market impacts. Well, here's an example of some of the labour market data that we're seeing. It's very strange. So here we've got the number of job postings on a particular job board over the last 3 years, and we can see this year is really looking very, very different indeed. If we then look at the number of claims for universal credit, which gives us a good indication about unemployment, we can see that the number of claims for universal credit, again, has just skyrocketed. We're just in a completely different environment now where unemployment, benefit claims are just completely changing the way people are relating to work. So I've been doing some research, particularly looking at the entry-level labour market, and I surveyed a bunch of employers through the ISE, and I asked them, how are you planning to change your recruitment in September? And what we see is that most of them didn't know at the point. This was quite near the beginning of the COVID-19 situation, but many of them were starting to say, well, actually, we're going to decrease the number of young people that we're going to hire. So this was really right at the beginning. I did another survey, this time with suppliers. So these are kind of labour market intermediaries, including a number of careers companies and career support companies of various kinds. How do you think we're going to see a change to the number of young people being hired? And what they're all saying is that there's going to be a decrease, or a very large proportion of them are saying that there's going to be a decrease in graduates, in non-graduates like apprentices, in interns and placement students. So this is a much more recent survey. It's not of people who are actually hiring, it's of these kind of intermediary bodies, but they're bodies that are in a really good position to understand what's happening. So all of this is contributing to what the economists are calling Britain's fastest economic contraction on record. And really the key political question has been, can we escape recession? And the answer really has been no. It's pretty clear now that we're going into a recession. And the question is, what is the nature of that recession? So people talk about a V-shaped recession. Will it be a quick, we went into this very quickly, or will we come out of it equally quickly as soon as lockdown's released? Will we just bounce back? Will it be more U-shaped? Should we expect that there'll be a bit longer when the economy will stay in recession? Or in a nice metaphor that I heard the other week, will it be shaped more like a wheelbarrow? And I think that's probably the most likely, that we're falling into recession, and we're still falling right at the moment. We'll probably stay in recession for quite a while, and then we will gradually climb out of that. And so that is a very substantially different kind of economy that people are going to be pursuing their careers in over the next few years than perhaps they have been for the last few years. And all of this led me to blog the following. The youth labour market is a ticking time bomb government needs to act now. And I'm not going to go through that, but essentially what I'm arguing here is that I'm very worried about the labour market all told. I'm worried about the future and prospects for people's careers. I'm particularly worried about the situation for young people. Okay, so up to now, I've been talking about these big economic impacts, these ways that people think about their chance of getting a job, their ability to get a pay rise, to find decent work, to remain employed. All of those things seem to me to be deteriorating at the moment and in risk of long-term deterioration. But let's think now about the psychosocial aspect. So the way in which individuals are thinking about and kind of trying to make sense of the world and the changes to the world around them. So our lives have really been transformed in many ways. I mean, I talked about my own experience of moving from a position where I was traveling a lot and commuting up and down to London and doing, going out and doing all sorts of things that were fairly normal, to a situation where I'm staring at my wall. That is the experience of most people. We've all been told to stay home. When we go out, there's nobody else out. And we're also all using, as I've got the cabinet here on their Zoom call, that we're all involved in kind of various forms of technology facilitated interaction. So our work has become bound up with technology, with e-learning, with all sorts of forms of e-work and so on. So our lives have been transformed. And one of the ways in which they've been transformed that's sort of extremely complex is that on one level we have been isolated from each other. We've become incredibly isolated. But on another level, our need for each other, our interconnection, has been really emphasized. And we've seen the creation of mutual aid societies where people around the country pledge that if their neighbours get ill, they will help them out and that kind of thing. And I think that the whole fact of being locked down, of social distancing and so on, it's a recognition of our interconnection as humanities. It's a recognition of our interconnection in society and how we all have some responsibility for each other. So that's a really kind of because it's pulling in two different ways at the same time. And ultimately, all of this helps us to recognize our fragility and our vulnerability. The things that we thought were solid have melted into air. They've become things that we can't rely on anymore. And that includes things like our health. And we're very aware now that our ability to work, to build a career and so on is dependent on our health. These are some pretty big changes, and I think that they probably changed how you might answer this question. What's important to you? So for me, certainly the last few weeks have changed this, and whether I'll be able to take those changes, those decisions that I've made in my thinking forward, I'm not sure at the moment. I suppose one of the things is it depends what happens next. So we wrote an article, me and my colleagues Ronald Sultana from the University of Malta and Rhea Thompson from Aarhus University in Denmark. We wrote an article on our blog, which I've linked to here, and we described lockdown as being a kind of pedagogic moment. It's a moment in which we think about our lives, we think about how the world works. We've got time for reflection, we've got time to think. And what we argued was that in such a situation, our role as careers workers is to help people to see that there are a range of different solutions to this crisis, and that we need to think them through carefully and consider who benefits from each of them. So this starts to open up this question of what is the role of career guidance in such a situation? So why do we need career guidance? Well, I suppose let's start by defining career guidance, because probably in your courses you're defining career guidance in a variety of ways. I've used this definition, which comes from the book that I wrote with Ronald Sultana and Rhea Thompson again, where we say career guidance supports individuals and groups to discover more about work, leisure and learning, and consider their place in the world and plan for their future. Career guidance can take a wide range of forms and draws on diverse theoretical traditions, but at its heart it's a purposeful learning opportunity which supports individuals and groups to consider and reconsider work, leisure and learning in the light of new information and experiences, and to take both individual and collective action as a result of this. So that's our definition of career guidance. So it's a broad definition. It's a definition that isn't just about doing one-to-one work with people. It's a whole wide range of different techniques that we might use to help people think about their work, their leisure, and their learning. And our argument will be that at the moment, this is exactly what is needed for people in this kind of current time. So in a time when work is disappearing or work is also changing, our work-life balance has shifted dramatically under lockdown and is likely to shift again. Transitions are becoming more difficult, particularly for young people, and many people are likely to have to make career shifts as the kind of nature of the global economy shifts in the light of this pandemic. So if we accept that those things are true, and I think the economic evidence tells us that that is likely to be the case, then people are going to need help dealing with these things. And that's really where my argument would be that career guidance comes in. That's why career guidance remains critical. So I think governments will need to create reconstruction strategies as a way of dealing with the situation that's emerged out of coronavirus. So career guidance has to be part of those reconstruction strategies. So I took to my blog again a couple of days ago and I said, well, what's to be done to avoid a meltdown of the youth labour market? And in that blog, I argued that we really need 5 kind of key policies. And this is really focused on young people, but much of this is also relevant for older workers as well. So everybody needs access to career guidance. We need help in dealing with these issues, and we need to help in understanding where opportunities remain, if they do remain, and what we're going to do with our time if they don't remain. We need to improve brokerage between education and employment and coordination of the labour market. It can't just be left as a kind of chaotic mess. We've got to try and help people to find their way to opportunities where they exist, to pool those opportunities, to make sure that we increase the efficiency of the labour market. We want to stimulate the uptake of training. Now is not a great time to be joining the labour market. It may be better for people to stay in education and training for a bit longer. And so if we can encourage people to do that through various stimulus, that would be good. If we can incentivise entry-level employment, perhaps giving some incentives to employers to help them to employ young people and take on more entry-level workers, that would also be powerful. And I'd also like to see the creation of internships, what we might call intermediate labour market, short-term jobs that perhaps would be turned to this task of reconstruction, to helping people, helping society to do the things that it needs to do. If in doing that we created a series of opportunities for young people to volunteer, paid volunteering, and take up these intermediate labour market jobs, these internships, I think that could be a really powerful part of this. So my point here is that career guidance is vital to helping society to deal with the crisis that we're currently in. It's not sufficient. We need other things, and I've sketched out here some other kinds of policies that we might need. There are many more, but career guidance needs to be part of that, and it needs to be at the centre of it. So career guidance obviously can't do everything. It's part of a wider strategy, but what kind of career guidance will we need to see in the future? Well, again, going back to the article that I wrote with Ronald and Rhea, we say the pandemic served to give a knockout blow to stable conceptions of the nature of work, leisure, family life and society. Much of the advice that we might have given about how to build a successful career can simply be cast aside. In a world where going to the office, networking and attending an interview are all things of the past, career guidance needs to radically and quickly transform its messages. And that's, I think, part of the core thing that you need to think about in your practice is some of the things that worked in career guidance in the past may not work anymore. The nature of the labour market's changing, and we really need to attend to that very carefully and help people to manage that. And that means that we need to be really in tune with that. That's really important. So there is also some other learning that I think career guidance can draw from the pandemic. The first is perhaps the most obvious one, which is that digital guidance has to be a core competency. It can't be a specialism or an option. I've been working on digital guidance for quite a long while, It's often seen as something which is a kind of an add-on. And what we've seen is that it cannot be an add-on anymore. It's got to be something that, if you're going to be a career guidance professional, you've got to be able to do digital guidance. I think there's some more existential questions here as well. So the basic promise of career guidance, that we can offer people a better life, just might not be true at the moment. We might be helping them to mitigate a worse life. We might be helping them to recognize some of the big problems that they're about to face and help them to deal with them as they come. And so that's quite a big change in the way we might think about our life and our work, really. And I think the other learning that we have is that your prospects, our clients' prospects for a better life, even actually to be alive at all, are bound up with other people. So this social dimension, we can't keep talking about individuals. We can't keep saying, well, it's all about you getting on and doesn't matter what happens to everyone else. We've got to recognize the social dimension through which people's lives and careers are lived. So this is why we've really made the argument for a social justice perspective in number of papers and books that we've written over the years, but particularly recently in relation to the COVID-19 situation. So it's important not to see COVID-19 as a kind of freak occurrence that enters a world and completely transforms it. The world that we live in is a world which is defined by the past, by the economy, by the politics of the past. And we would argue that the 2009 crash, so the collapse of Lehman Brothers being shown here, but also the wider economic meltdown that we saw in 2008, 2009, set a key critical context for the political economy of the world. And that is the world into which COVID-19 entered. So last year, I wrote that it was the weirdest year I'd ever lived through, and we've got some pictures showing some of the kind of things that were strange and unexpected that happened last year. We've got Trump, we've got the Australian wildfires, we've got activists arguing for things, we've got breakup of countries, we've got so many things that seemed very distant a few years ago. We probably wouldn't have predicted that Greta Thunberg would become an international celebrity and political figure. I mean, this was a very strange year that we lived through last year. And yet, 2020 comes along, hold my beer, here we go, we're in a completely different level of weird now. So the point here is to recognize that while COVID-19 has made a big shift in the political economy of the world, in the labour market of the world, it has also built on things that come before, and so we need to understand those things as well. So Nita Madhav, who's a pandemic specialist, she argues, well, the likelihood of pandemics has increased over the past century because of increased global travel and integration, urbanisation, changes in land use, and greater exploitation of the natural environment. So the world that we lived in didn't create the pandemic, not in a straightforward way. No one sat and thought, oh, this will be a good idea. But what it did do was it created a situation within which the pandemic could thrive. So we are in a world which is susceptible to pandemic because of the level of environmental destruction that we've created, because of the shift to globalization and unfettered movement of at least some people, and because of the rolling back of the state and the loss of public and state capacity to address these problems. We've been told that we don't need government, we don't need state, we don't need a public sector, we don't need investment. And so what that means is when we hit a crisis, we have less capacity to deal with. So COVID-19 is leading us to short to medium term lockdowns, the mothballing of the economy, but it's also leading us to long-term recession with major impacts for the labour market and especially for labour market entrants. And this might not go away quickly or even at all. And it raises the question, is this the new normal? So how are we going to define this new normal as it emerges? What is it going to mean? What is the world we're going to live in going to be like? So the new normal is going to be changed by circumstances. Different things will be possible than were possible in the past. We've been hearing about the likelihood of lockdown going on for a number of months, even years. Different things are going to be possible, but it's also going to be changed by politics. We can collectively decide how to respond to these changing circumstances. And then it's also going to be changed by individuals. So we can pursue different career strategies and paths through this new normal. So career guidance has no choice other than to engage with this changing normality. And what we try to do in our writing is to define how we might adopt a position within career guidance that helps us to challenge some of the inequalities, some of the things that are wrong with society, whilst also supporting people with their careers. And we call those the 5 signposts for the socially just career guidance. And so I'm just going to quickly run through those to finish. So the first thing that our role in this current situation as career guidance professionals, our role is to help people to understand this. We call it building critical consciousness. Help people to understand the situation, not just to react to it on a personal level. We have to help them to work out what is happening and why it's happening. We also need to name oppression. We need to recognize that the new situation, the post-lockdown era, is likely to lead us to different kinds of oppression. Some people are going to be winners out of it. Many people are going to be losers. So what do we do about that? How can we help them? Well, we need to support those oppressed groups. We need to help them. We need to help to organise in solidarity with them so that they can access a decent career. Even if you're immunocompromised, you should still be able to have a decent career. Even if you're a migrant worker, you should still be able to have a decent career, and so on. We should question what's normal, and this one has become really central. The new normal is the frontier of political debate, and we should be talking about that. Career guidance interviews are going to be about what is the new normal. Can I expect things to go back to how they were, or is it going to change? And if it's going to change, how is it going to change? And we've got to give people ways to help themselves by working with others. So that's our 4th signpost: encourage people to work together, play an important role in facilitating social interactions, building collaborations, helping people to build solidarity with each other. And then we need to work at a range of levels. We need to recognise that career guidance goes on in one-to-one settings, it goes on in group settings, but sometimes we're going to hit problems that we can't solve in that way. And we're going to have to go and talk to power. We're going to have to go and talk to the people who run universities, or the people who organise admissions criteria, or recruit for jobs, or even to the government and policymakers. And our argument is that career guidance is not just when you're talking to a one-to-one. Career guidance is not just when you're delivering a lesson in a class. Career guidance is also when you're advocating for your clients at these other levels, when you're arguing with policymakers about a policy that's disrupting and destroying the careers of many of the people you work with. That's still career guidance. So this is a framework that we can use to give us ideas about how to respond to some of the challenges that we're experiencing. Here's a bit of information about me, lots of various ways that you can get me. I go to my blog, the Social Justice website of blog as well. And please get in touch if you've found any of this stuff interesting. You'll find me on Twitter, amongst other places. So my conclusion here is that COVID-19 poses some big issues for our society. How we answer them will shape how the future unfolds. Career guidance has got an important role to play. And ultimately in career guidance, we're helping people to define what is the new normal and where do they fit into it. Thank you.